discrimination. Narratives often interweave narration, description, and commentary to offer the reader an experience and to shed light on the larger issues. In this way, they employ literary techniques to convey a clear argument or perspective to help readers see a situation in a new way. Your essay should focus on your experiences, drawing on specific details, events, characters, conflicts, and interactions. It should be 2 to 4 double-spaced pages with 12-point font and 1-inch margins. Successful narratives tell a compelling story about a cultural event or an instance of discrimination. Combine narration, description, and commentary to illuminate a larger issue. Provide vivid and specific details to support a clear perspective. And they should be written in clear and appropriate language. So to help you meet these goals, I've created the narrative writing worksheet. So you'll find the prompt under writing prompts and formal submissions along the left-hand side. When you click on that, it would bring you to this page. And when you're ready to submit your essay, you would click here. And then it will show you when it's due. And you would scroll down. You would attach your file. If you have any comments that you want me to know, you put them here, and then you would click on Submit. The narrative writing worksheet is found in Gail's Guide to Grammar, so you would click on here. Right now, I'm just going to click here to bring us there. It's on page 17 in Gail's Guide to Grammar. So the narrative writing worksheet, you should notice, follows the same pattern as the narrative writing PowerPoint. So you want to think about Mrs. Flowers and learning to read, and you want to keep the focus on a small moment in time that is representative of the larger story you want to tell. And in this way, you'll be able to show your ideas so people feel as if they are experiencing your cultural event or the act of discrimination along with you. That will make it a lot more evocative and meaningful to the readers. So the first thing for the worksheet is just to get your idea down. You know, what are you planning on writing about? So you can think of this section as the tell. So tell me what you're writing about. But then the rest of the paper, you want to show it by using vivid details, examples, imagery. And as you're writing, you want to ensure that you answer all of the journalistic questions, the who, what, when, where, why, and how. So who describe one of the characters? Think about descriptors that will shape the tone of the testimonial or the narrative that you are writing. So what this means is thinking about Mrs. Flowers and how she was described by Angelou with her rich black skin. She was her skin, she was also compared to a plum, and all of these language choices that she uses when she talks about Mrs. Flowers help us to understand who Mrs. Flowers is. And we learn not just from physical description about her, but she also talks about how articulately Mrs. Flowers speaks. When she describes Mrs. Flowers' home, which is part of the setting, we learn more about Mrs. Flowers from her home. And so what we learn about her home reinforces this idea that she was like the equivalent of aristocracy in Black stamps. So thinking about the characters who are in your story and providing information about them that can help the reader really see them and understand who they are. The specific detail worksheet, also in Gail's Guide to Grammar, can be really helpful in getting you to brainstorm specificity and replace more vague statements with more specific ones. So I definitely encourage you to do that worksheet if you have not already. The next important journalistic question is what? So that's when you would be detailing the events. And you want to think about using strong action verbs that will help propel the plot forward. So the using compelling verbs and diction worksheet in Gail's Guide to Grammar can be helpful with that. So for instance, if you say, I was in a car accident and I crawled home. I was in a car accident and I ran home. I was in a car accident and I limped home. All three of those give the three different verbs, ran, crawled, or limped, give very specific ideas of the level of injury of the person, rather than if you just said, I went home. So again, thinking about verbs that can help propel the narrative forward and increase the reader's understanding of your story. When you need to make sure you provide a context for the story and that it should tie to a wider social issue. A lot of people like to do that at the introduction or the conclusion of their paper, and that's fine. It can be especially good if you interweave contextual clues throughout. So again, using Mrs. Flowers as the example, one of the things she mentions is that Mrs. Flowers has an ice box. And so that reinforces Mrs. Flowers' wealth, but it also reinforces the time period because this was before people had refrigerators. This is when only wealthy people had ice boxes. So using things like music or other cultural touchstones for that time period can be another way to deepen the context of your story and make it more relevant to the era with which you write. And it can also sometimes then make it easier to make a connection to present day issues. Where describe the setting, be sure to include all 5 senses in your description. So again, you want to make sure that you are not just relying on visual cues, that's the most common, but think about senses of smell. When you go to a movie theater, it smells like popcorn. When you go to a grammar school cafeteria, it smells like vomit and grease. So think about kind of some of those details that can help the reader feel as if they are there by incorporating their senses. The same with music or loud stomping feet or a train whistle, different details like that, again, bring all of the senses together. So make sure that you're thinking about that. Why? What served as a catalyst for the action of this story? So again, making sure that the narrative is clear, like why did all of this happen? Like that should be answered. And then what additional information should you include to clarify how the events unfolded as they did? For example, how did someone's behavior affect the outcome? Really, for the how section is kind of bringing some of these other ideas together, going through making sure that the why is clear, making sure that there are strong transitions so that the ideas are clearly connected, so that if there is a fight in one location and then you're at a different location, there's a clear understanding of how you got from the one place to the other. The final reminder on this sheet is to remember that good stories draw readers in, build to a climax, and end with a resolution. Provide an outline of your story by writing a topic sentence for each of your paragraphs. You may want to revisit your initial summary and fine-tune it based on your answers to these journalists' questions. So you might want to lay out kind of an overall outline because you're not just going to answer these questions and then who, what, when, where, why, but all of your answers will be infused throughout the narrative. So the first thing that is due is you submitting a completed narrative writing worksheet to me.